Hey everyone, in this video today, we're just going to go over a few topics in preparation for week 2 of our Davis. And that's going to be talking about the files that you have in your R project and a little bit about file paths and working directories. So this first topic of what files do I keep in RStudio? How do I manage a project as it will grow and grow over time? And so this is really just an exercise in looking at the sort of folders that exist and creating a couple ones together on the video. So you probably ask yourself this question a lot. You know, I'm entering grad school. Do I have a giant grad school folder? Do I have a research folder? Do I have a folder for every class? What subfolders belong in those things? And there are some best practices for these sorts of questions for R projects in particular. So generally, when you're working in R, you are going to have a couple important folders. This will be your data folder, where you keep your raw data especially. We also usually create a data outputs folder, which will be any manipulated data that you create, but it keeps your raw data untouched. You'll have a folder for your scripts or your code. So these .r documents that we started creating last week and will continue to work in usually live in a folder. And then sometimes you can also have outputs for, say, figures or anything else that you might be creating in your project. So today we're just going to create some of those folders as a way of getting us in the habit of having these bits and pieces in our own projects. So you can generally see in the bottom right-hand corner what the sort of file structure of your R project currently looks like. And because you cloned this repository from us, we already created a data folder for you and a README. But normally, if you were to create a project on your own, you would only have this R project living in your RStudio for now. So we're going to talk about just creating some of the folders that we will be using. And of course, your eyes might be drawn to this new folder button, and this will be can definitely be used. It's pretty intuitive. It will insert a new folder just like in most of your computers. But I'm also going to go over how to make folders and documents in the command line. So if we enter into our console over here, we don't even have to open up a script. In order to create a new folder, or what R will think of as a directory, the function is directory.create or dir.create, which when you start typing directory, you can see some of these auto-populating before I even tab complete. And I can start typing it, and here I am in directory create, and you can look at the prompts inside it, which are path, show warnings, recursive, false mode. We don't totally need to know what those are yet, and we'll talk about troubleshooting later, but we're just going to focus on this path concept, which for now will be the name of the folder we want to create. So directory create, and let's say I want to create a folder called scripts, because this is where I'm going to store all of my code for the class. So I put scripts in quotation marks because it does want the name of this new folder. And then you can see that scripts has now populated in my viewer over here, and it is now a part of the R project. But one of the other pieces that I want to talk about is, okay, we were able to add a folder into this, but how did R know exactly where to put it when all I said was directory create scripts? I didn't give it a specific location. And this really hits on this concept of a working directory and why we use our projects in addition to this whole repository and folder structure, what the role of an R project does. So an R project sets your RStudio working directory to the folder in which it lives, and then it will always allow you to start your workflow from that base folder. So what does this mean? We had you all create a folder on your desktop and put your R project inside of that. And so all of us have the same file path and we'll always start from the same point when we open up our RStudio project. And one way to see this is looking into R. So let's start first is that a good habit to get yourself into is to look at your working directory almost whenever you start a new project, you're not quite sure where you are. So I can type get wd, which is a pretty base command in R, And I'll leave the parentheses open because you don't need to put any arguments into this. And if you press enter, also I will zoom in for everyone, sorry about that. You press enter, and what R spits out is this long file path, which is the series of files where your R project eventually lives. So at the greatest outset, it's users of my computer, me, my desktop, my RDavis folder, and the project, which is, this should look pretty similar to all of you. But what this helps us with is that R already knows to begin all of its workflow from your project, as opposed to, say, your desktop or the folder that your project is in. It starts from wherever this the project, the .r project lives. Why is this important? Because as we start calling upon different, let's say, data, or if we were to source something else into our R script, we want to know where to get it, and it'll also help us on where to save things like new scripts. So ways that we can sort of navigate through these file paths in R is we can check them out by opening up some quotation marks inside our command line here. And if I automatically just press tab, so I've put down quotation marks and press tab, which is our sort of prompt to investigate what's happening, it immediately shows me really all of the files that I have in my R project. And this is R saying, I know where you are already. What do you want from this local space? And that can be really useful when we want to access something like our data. We don't need to type in this whole long file path because this is already where R is starting. So that when I hit the next tab, R can pretty much tell me what sort of add-on needs to happen in this file path, separated by forward slashes, without me having to type the entire, length of where this data actually lives. So this would be the longhand form. But I'm not going to do that because R already knows that I'm in my project. And so if I want to access my data or anything else, I just need to start from here. This is also useful because when the same principle really applies when you're saving something. So if you want to create a new folder or save something, R will always be creating or saving it from the perspective of this R project unless you tell it otherwise. So I think really rarely in this class will we be telling it otherwise. We're going to be functioning from our R project, but make sure that if you put in a request for get working directory and you do not see this project as the tail end of that, then we can troubleshoot that in class. And in class, we're going to experiment a little bit with creating new projects, making sure we understand this workflow of what a project is, what the working directory is. And this takes a bit to sink in if you haven't already, but 3 years in, I've realized how important it is to know where you're working, where your stuff is going. It makes your workflow a lot smoother.